Get that noob weak
Alright, it was a good call to wait to 5 past. Nice.
Yeah, I'm not good at that. I notice everyone's always too late.
Yeah, it's
I was in time.
you always feel so welcomed when you're too late and everybody's already waiting for you. Great.
Facts. Okay, I guess we can start.
Epic guys, welcome to the second lecture of Competitive Gathering. In this lecture, I will be talking a little bit more about jungle pathing and jungle tracking, which are both really important for laners and junglers. To start off, firstly, I will tell why is jungle pathing important. Then I would talk about the 3 main jungle archetypes. Then objective timers. Then the actual jungle pathing. I think that do the 5 most important ones. Then a little bit about tracking, and then the second half we'll do some exercises. So first off, why is jungle pathing important? So jungle pathing is probably one of the most basic and most important concepts for junglers. Without a good knowledge on this, you can already get out jungled at minute 2. At the same time, it's also very important for the laners to know at least some basic knowledge about jungle pathing. To sum up, some advantage about jungle pathing will be, for example, maximize your XP and gold gain while moving towards the lane that you want to gank or help. With this you can maximize your impact in the game without barely wasting and costing you resources. Furthermore, it's also really important to identify which path to take based on what jungler you are. Jungler like Kayn has a lot of AoE damage and clears camps such as Raptors faster than a single target DPS, such as Warwick. Also really important is efficient clearing. You would have to know how much XP you can get from each camp and how to set up a good camping sequence. If you take, for example, double buffs and wolves, you are still level 2 compared to enemy jungler that takes Gromp and double buffs. And furthermore, with a bad camp sequence, you can lose a lot of XP and time in your jungle. To have knowledge on this will help you to not put yourself in a disadvantage. Okay, the 3 main archetype junglers. Firstly, we have farming, ganking, and control junglers. It is kind of important to know which jungler fits into these categories, as they all have different jobs during the game, and also most likely a different jungle path. Do note, compared to the lecture last week, these are not really like rock, paper, scissors, or triangle, since they do not necessarily count each other, and there are a lot of junglers that fits into more than one category. But generally speaking, farming beats control beats ganking, and ganking beats farming. A little bit about farming junglers. Farming junglers usually want to power farm and are quite weak early, often until level 6 or late game when they unlock their full potential. These types of junglers often have strong clear speed and can become a carry later in the game. This doesn't mean that they don't do anything early. They can still gank lanes when they are literally free, like push up without vision, or help the laners when they need to push the waves or prevent the dive or counter gank. But they also often rely on setups from laners, so coordination between you and the laner is also really important. About ganky junglers. Those junglers excel at ganking and are very oppressive early. It doesn't mean that their kit is full of CC. Lots of damage and high mobility can work as well. For example, junglers like Lee Sin. Generally, these junglers focus less on clearing, since often their clears are worse than average or don't scale too well. So their job goal is to aim to get their laners ahead to carry the game for them. Generally, ganky junglers are quite good against farming junglers, since they can impact the game early much more heavily and let the lanes snowball so hard that farming junglers do not get a chance to farm until the late game. Examples of ganking junglers are, like I said, Lee Sin, Elise, Xin Zhao, etc. Then we have the control junglers. These jungle excel around playing objectives such as Baron, Dragon, or Tower, or rely on counter jungling where their task is to make the enemy jungle as less impactful as possible. This can be done by invading, counter ganks, early takedown of dragons. Generally, kits of these junglers vary very much, as they can focus on dueling the enemy junglers or have a strong burst on objectives. Example of these junglers are, for example, Nunu, Ivern, or Graves. Does anyone have any question?
Not so far.
Right, then I can move on. Objectives timers. Objectives are very important to know and to remember, as such timings are important for both laners and junglers. The game is often played around these timers, so you want to be at least 30 seconds before those timers hit. The first and probably the most important timer is the Scuttle spawn. The Scuttle spawns at 3 minutes and 15 seconds. Around this time is often when junglers are done with their first clear and are looking around the river or looking for a gank in one of the side lanes or mid lane. As a laner, you want to have some vision at least a minute before the spawn to avoid getting ganked or to know where the enemy jungler actually is. And the jungler itself has to be ready before this time to take the scuttle or gank before this time, so they can have prior over the scuttle crab.
Can I make a comment?
Mhm.
It's also a point of annoyance because of a game I had this afternoon where I timed my Zac E for the CC for the Scuttle at 3:15,
Yeah.
but the Scuttle completely dodged it and came out of its hidey hole at 3:16, so the timer might not be precise.
Yeah, generally you just watch and see when the health bar appears, then you can hit it.
Yeah, but it's not 3:15 though. It's only a few seconds, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Alright, the next timer is the first dragon. The first dragon spawns at 5 minutes. This is slightly less important than the first scuttle spawn, since the first dragon is often taken a bit later than 5 minutes. But nonetheless, you can set up bot ganks before this time and can get control of the first drag and probably take it as well. And then at 8 minutes we have the first herald spawn. For this is also somewhat okay to take it later. The herald is often taken as a bonus, and preferably you want to take it before the third plating goes off, which is at 40 minutes. And yeah, the reason that you want to do that is just to maximize your gold gain with this objective. And lastly, the respawn timers. Yeah, these have gotten kind of less important to remember, since the minimap shows nowadays which camp is spawning 10 seconds before spawning, since this patch. But for information, normal camp spawns every 2:15. The buff spawns at 5 minutes. And the scuttle crab spawns every 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Of course, after the first 2 scuttle are taken on both sides of the map. For higher elos, these can be important, as they are used often to track the enemy jungler. For example, if they clear their camp, then you can expect them to be around that quadrant 2 minutes later. Or when the scuttle's almost spawning, you can expect the enemy jungler to clear in towards that side. Yeah, before this patch, this normal camp spawn rate was 2 minutes. Let's see. Alright, now about the jungle paths itself. To start off, I will talk about the Vulclear, probably one of the most well-known and the easiest jungle path. The Vulclear has been very popular the last few patches, as you saw champions such as Hecarim and Udi fully utilizing this path. Their clear speed is so good and fast that they can do full clear and still be in time for the scuttle fights or the first ganks. Okay. Yeah, more about the clear itself. So the clear fully maximize experience and gold gain from the camps, as you are clearing as soon as possible, so they can respawn as soon as possible as well. And just like I said, the full clear is most used for path. It's the most used path for farming junglers such as Udyr and Cardis. More about the path itself. So if you start from the red side and you take red buff, then you can level 2 from it. Then you go to the Krugs, Chickens, Wolves, blue buff, and Cromp. And on the other side you have blue buff, Cromp, Wolves, Raptors, red buff, Krugs. And normally you can expect a linking out 3 minutes 40, but you have fast junglers as Olaf and Udyr, they can play quite early, already at 3:15. Let's see, now to visualize the bot itself. So you have a red buff, Krugs, Raptors, Wolves, blue buff, Cromp. About the next path, with the 5 camps clear. These are for a bit slower clearing junglers, but also want to maximize XP and gold gain. But they also want to be in time for the Scuttle Crab. Generally, the Krugs are often ignored, as they are like the most time inefficient camp to clear. And I feel like that this path will become more popular after this path, after this patch, since Krugs are getting even less worth. The path is from the red side. Red buff, Raptors, Wolves. Then you go to blue buff, Cromp into the Scuttle Crab. And on the other side, blue buff, Cromp, Wolves, Raptor, red buff into the Scuttle Crabs. So basically skipping the Krugs. And you can expect the junglers to be around 3:15 then. Okay, so the visualized path, red buff, Chickens, Wolves, blue buff, Cromp, and then Scuttle. The jungle path, this one with 3 camps. This is probably one of the most basic route. There are also 2 different variations to this clear, which I will be talking about both. Generally 3 camps is for ganking junglers, so they can hit level 3 very fast and can already start impacting the map before the enemy jungler can do anything. And after successful ganks, you often have more control on the map, so the farming junglers will have even harder time to pull off ganks or have generally harder time to clear the entire jungle. The 3 camps also got much better this season compared to season 10, as the Cromp gives you HP and mana back, which results that the junglers often are at full mana bar and almost full health. Junglers that take this route are, for example, Lee Sin, Xin Zhao. Now, a little bit about route itself. This variation is the 1 quadrant clear to a gank. So you have from the red side, red buff, Krugs, Raptors, then you look for gank mid lane. And then you take control of Scuttle and trying to take it, and then the buffs. And on the other side, the blue buff, Cromp, Wolves into mid gank, and then probably Scuttle and then a red buff. And the mid lane can expect the gank around 2:45 or earlier. So to visualize clear, red buff, Krugs, Raptors into the mid lane gank, trying to take a scuttle, and then backing out jungle to take the blue buff. And then the level 3 gank. This is a different 3 camps route, as you take the red buff, blue buff, Cromp into a side lane gank. And if you have successful gank, you often have like full control of the scuttle, so you can take that and you can go into the mid lane, gank after it. On all sides the same, blue buff, Cromp, red buff, then into a side lane gank, then scuttle and the mid lane. And the gank around the side lanes you can expect to be around 245 to 315, depends on clear speed on jungler. So to visualize it, red buff to the other buff, Cromp, gank top, take scuttle, gank mid. And then we have the 4 camps clear. This is probably one of my favorites. The 4 camps clear is also quite a basic route, but it's not as used as often. The route itself is very flexible and allows you to play either aggressive or very safe without losing too much. Furthermore, it's right in the middle ground and set a good camp sequence for your future jungle planning. So the full camp clear is from the red side. You start at red buff, go into chickens, take your other buff, and take Cromp. And from the blue side you take blue buff, Cromp, wolves, red buff. So to visualize it, red buff, raptors, blue buff, and then Cromp. And at this point you can either decide to go take the scuttle or keep farming in your jungle. And this decision is made based on, can I win the scuttle fight? Do I have priority in my lane? If the answer is no, you often want just to go back in your jungle and keeps farming. Otherwise, if you can win, you just try to take a scuttle and look for a gank either top or mid. And all the variation is just you go back to your wolves, get the bottom scuttle, and try to look for a bot lane gank. And if that's not possible, take your crux. And around this time, your raptors will also probably be spawning, and you just can go back in jungle and start a full circle again. And the invade jungle path is probably the most aggressive one. And often not as used as often, as it's kind of high risk, high reward path. And it requires coordination with your team. This path is often taken by strong level 2 junglers such as Jarvan and Nunu. And the plan is with this clear is to get a lead very early on either by invading the enemy jungle or get a level 2 gank off. And as a consequence of this, pathing can be that the mob is split into the vertical jungle lane, which happens a lot last season, I believe. The bot itself is very easy. You go get the enemy buff after yours. Let's see. The red buff, and then you go to the enemy blue buff. Or you can go immediately gank a lane, either mid lane or side lane. And the expected time around this is just less than 2 minutes. So it's often also when the lanes are still level 1. Alright. To visualize it, red buff into enemy blue buff. Or you can decide to gank the lane. So not all routes are actually covered in the in the last 5 routes. Only the most basic ones. There are of course a lot of junglers, and some can have their own special pathing. Example can be Heka, Kayn, Lilia, where they can start off the Raptors camp, or Fiddlesticks, where he full clears 2 camps at the same time, and starting at Wolves. It is important to think what route the enemy jungler takes, so you can adjust your route accordingly. and the route is not fixed and can differ each game. Just look at the lanes, at the enemy jungler, etc., and keep adjusting your route. And avoid stuff like spaghetti pathing, where you completely mess up your jungle sequence. Example would be you see something at bot, you want to go there, and you are at the top side, so you skip your raptor scamps and wants to path to bot lane. And suddenly you see that you are not needed anymore, and you can start doing your wolves into their cromp, and then you are either stuck with recalling or trying to gank the lane. Well, you can also decide to do cromp, wolves, and then chickens, which kind of fix your jungle sequence. Okay, are there any questions so far? Okay, I think not. Jungle tracking. Okay. Jungle tracking is probably one of the most important for both jungle and laners, as this can create opportunities to invade, counter jungling, counter ganking. Basically, your job is to make their jungler useless. And this is also one concept that makes the difference between an out-of-field jungler and a true jungle main. If you do this well, and then you can, like, starting for first minute, you can keep track of the enemy jungler for like 10 minutes, which can be really useful. Generally, it's very easy to understand what you need to do when you know where the enemy jungler is. If you see him at the top side, you go invade their bot side or gank a bot lane. And the plan is also to do much more compared to enemy jungler itself. So if their jungler is diving bot, you go top, zone their laner, and try to take also their entire top lane jungle. So you get more out of it. And try to avoid autopiloting. You can do that by asking yourself some important question each minute. Let's see. So firstly, you ask what are their win conditions. Often these lanes are ganked much more often than other lanes. Which objectives are coming up? Where did I last see their jungler? And what's their CS score? The CS score, since a few seasons ago, Riot made that each camp is worth 4 CS. So if you can like count their CS score really well when you see them, and compare to the CS score when you last see them, you can just guess where they have been the last minute and what their pathing is in the next minute as well. Let's see. Okay, this is an example. In this example, you see Fiddle ganking bot lane, and he has 50 CS. While you are still at top side, and let's assume for this reason you know that all their camps top side is still up, so you decide to invade. And a minute later or something, you see Fiddle appear at mid lane, and you see that he has like 58 CS, which means he has done 2 camps. This can either mean he did his Cromp Wolves, or he did your jungle, so Crux and the Raptors. And if you warded your jungle well, then you know, oh, he did his bot side jungle. So his next pathing will be probably towards top side, since the bottom side jungle is empty. So your plan will be sit in a burst and set up a trap for Fiddlestick, if that is possible. Otherwise, yeah, you just know where Fiddlestick is for the next 2 or 3 minutes. He will probably clear towards top and then recall and then look towards the gankable lane or the next objective. Yeah, once again, just keep asking this question each time. What are their win conditions? Which objectives are coming up? Where did I last see their jungler? And what's their CS score? And if you do this well, you can probably track the enemy jungler pretty much the entire game. And that was the presentation. Does anyone have questions?